It is just before dawn in the high desert of southern Jordan, and you are standing at the entrance to a narrow gorge carved deep into rose-colored stone. The air is cool and still, carrying the faint scent of dust and wild herbs that cling to the canyon walls. Above you, the sky is beginning to pale, shifting from deep indigo to a soft wash of amber along the eastern horizon. The cliffs on either side rise so high and stand so close together that they seem to lean inward, as if guarding something sacred. This place is called the Sick, and beyond it lies a city that was once among the wealthiest and most beautiful in the ancient world. A city carved entirely from living rock. A city that controlled the flow of incense, spices, and silk across the deserts of Arabia. A city that disappeared so completely from human memory that for more than 1,000 years it existed only in whispers and legend. This is Petra. But tonight you will not walk through it as a ruin. You will not see it as tourists do, crowded and photographed and half dissolved by time. Tonight you will step back more than 2,000 years to a time when Petra was alive, when its streets were filled with merchants and pilgrims, when water flowed through channels carved into stone, when the sound of chisels rang from the cliffs as masons shaped tombs for kings. You will walk through the city as it was in its glory, and you will come to understand the people who built it. The Nabataeans, a desert people who turned stone and water into an empire. So settle in now, let the noise of the modern world fade away, let the glow of screens dim and the hum of engines quiet. You are about to enter a kingdom hidden by sand, a place where human ambition was carved into the very bones of the earth. And when our journey is done, you will understand why Petra, even in silence, even in ruin, still whispers its story to those who listen. The land that would one day cradle Petra is a place of extremes. It is a landscape carved by wind and water over millions of years, a terrain of deep canyons and high plateaus, of stone that glows red and gold and violet depending on the angle of the sun. This is the edge of the Arabian desert, where the fertile crescent gives way to emptiness, where rain falls perhaps a handful of times each year, and where survival depends not on abundance but on knowledge. The mountains here are not green. They do not hold forests or meadows. They are bones of sandstone and limestone, layered in bands of color, worn smooth by the relentless wind. Between the peaks run narrow valleys called wodis, dry riverbeds that lie silent for months and then, without warning, roar to life when a distant storm sends flash floods racing down from the highlands. To live here, you must understand the rhythms of water. You must know where it hides beneath the sand, where it pools in the shadow of a cliff, where it can be coaxed from stone. The people who first settled this land understood these things. They were Nabataeans, an Arab tribe whose name appears in the records of other civilizations as early as the 4th century before the Common Era. They were not city builders at first. They were nomads, moving through the desert with herds of camels and goats, following ancient trails that connected the coasts of the Red Sea with the fertile valleys of Syria and the great rivers of Mesopotamia. They did not grow crops. They did not conquer armies or build temples to distant gods. What they did, and what they did with extraordinary skill, was trade. The Nabataeans were masters of the Incense Road, the network of caravan routes that carried frankincense and myrrh from the kingdoms of southern Arabia northward to the Mediterranean world. These resins, harvested from trees that grew only in the highlands of Yemen and Oman, were among the most valuable commodities in the ancient world. They were burned in temples as offerings to the gods. They were used in embalming the dead. They were ingredients in medicine and perfume. A single camel load of frankincense could be worth more than a year's harvest of grain. The Nabataeans did not produce these goods, but they controlled the routes by which they moved. They knew the desert. They knew where water could be found, where bandits hid, where the safest passes lay through the mountains. Caravans traveling north from Arabia would hire Nabataean guides, pay Nabataean tolls, and rest in Nabataean camps. In this way, wealth flowed into the hands of a people who owned almost nothing but knowledge and endurance. Over time, the seasonal camps became permanent settlements. The Nabataeans began to carve cisterns into the rock to store water. They built corrals for their animals and simple shelters from stone, and at one particular place, where a spring flowed year-round in a hidden valley surrounded by cliffs, they began to build something more. They began to build Petra. The site was chosen with care. It lay at the crossroads of several trade routes, one running north to Damascus, another west to Gaza and the Mediterranean. a third south into the Arabian Peninsula, and a fourth east toward the Persian Gulf. It was defensible, accessible only through narrow gorges that could be blocked by a handful of men. And most important, it had water. The spring that fed the valley was small, but it was reliable, and the Nabataeans, with their deep understanding of hydrology, knew they could make it sufficient. In the beginning, Petra was not a city of stone monuments. It was a collection of tents and modest structures, a place where traders rested and animals were watered. But as the Nabataeans grew wealthier, as their control over the incense trade became absolute, they began to transform their settlement into something permanent, something that would proclaim their power and their sophistication to the world. They began to carve. The sandstone of the Petra Valley is soft enough to be worked with iron tools but hard enough to endure for centuries. Its colors are extraordinary. Bands of red, orange, pink, cream, and violet swirling through the rock like frozen currents in a river. The Nabataeans looked at these cliffs and saw possibility. They did not build temples and tombs by stacking stones. They carved them directly from the mountainside, cutting downward and inward, shaping doorways and columns and chambers from solid rock. This was not mere construction. It was sculpture on a monumental scale. The earliest carvings were simple, small tombs cut into the hillsides, modest facades with plain doorways. But as Nabataean wealth and ambition grew, so did the scale and sophistication of their architecture. They began to incorporate elements from the cultures they traded with. From Egypt, they borrowed the idea of monumental tombs and the symbolism of eternal life. From Greece and the Hellenistic kingdoms of the Eastern Mediterranean, they adopted the language of columns and pediments, of Corinthian capitals and decorative friezes. From Persia, they took motifs of power and kingship. All of these influences were blended into something uniquely Nabataean, a style that was at once cosmopolitan and deeply rooted in the desert. By the 1st century before the Common Era, Petra had become a true city, with a population that may have numbered as many as 20,000 people. It was the capital of a kingdom that stretched from the Red Sea to Damascus, a kingdom that grew rich not through conquest but through commerce, diplomacy, and an unmatched mastery of the desert environment. What made Petra possible? What allowed a city to thrive in one of the driest regions on Earth? Was water. The Nabataeans did not merely hope for rain or ration what little they had. They engineered the landscape itself to capture, store, and distribute every possible drop. This was their genius. And it was this genius that transformed a seasonal camp into a flourishing urban center. The Nabataean water system was a masterpiece of ancient engineering, a network of dams, channels, cisterns, and ceramic pipes that would not be surpassed in complexity for more than 1,000 years. Begin with the rain. In the highlands around Petra, rainfall is rare and unpredictable, but when it comes suddenly and violently. A storm can drop months' worth of rain in a single afternoon, sending torrents of water racing down the wadis in flash floods that can sweep away anything in their path. The Nabataeans built a series of small dams across these wadis, structures designed not to hold back the floods but to slow them, to divert a portion of the rushing water into channels carved along the canyon walls. These channels, some of them mere inches wide, followed the natural contours of the land, carrying water to a series of large cisterns carved deep into the bedrock. Some of these cisterns were enormous, capable of holding tens of thousands of gallons. They were lined with plaster to prevent seepage, and they were covered to reduce evaporation. From the cisterns, water was distributed throughout the city via a network of underground pipes. These pipes were not made of metal but of carefully shaped ceramic sections, each one fitted to the next with waterproof mortar. The pipes followed gentle gradients, ensuring a steady flow without the need for pumps. Water reached homes, public fountains, and gardens. It filled troughs for animals and pools for ritual bathing. It even flowed through decorative fountains in the courtyards of the wealthy. The most remarkable aspect of this system was its redundancy. The Nabataeans understood that in the desert, a single point of failure could mean disaster. So they built multiple sources, multiple channels, multiple storage facilities. If one cistern ran dry, another could supply the need. If a channel was blocked by a rockfall, water could be rerouted through a parallel conduit. The system was designed to be resilient, adaptable, and above all, efficient. Every drop was accounted for, captured, stored, and used. Walking through Petra in its prime, you would hear the constant, subtle sound of water moving through stone. Not the roar of a river or the crash of a waterfall, but the quiet murmur of a carefully controlled flow, the gentle trickle from a fountain, the drip of condensation in a shaded cistern. In a land where water was life, this sound was a declaration of triumph. It said, "We have mastered the desert. We do not merely survive here, we thrive." To enter Petra, you must first pass through the sick, and to pass through the sick is to undergo a transformation. The journey is not long, perhaps a mile and a quarter, but it is a journey that takes you from the open desert into a hidden world, a passage from the known into the sacred. The sick is a natural gorge, a crack in the earth carved over millions of years by water and tectonic movement. At its narrowest points, the walls are so close that you could stretch out your arms and touch both sides. At its deepest, the cliffs rise more than 300 feet above your head, leaning inward so that only a narrow ribbon of sky remains visible. The stone here is not uniform. It is layered, banded, swirled with color. In some places it is deep red, the color of dried blood. In others it is pale pink, almost white. There are streaks of gold and violet, veins of darker stone that run through the sandstone like frozen lightning. The Nabataeans did not leave the sick untouched. As you walk, you notice carvings along the walls. Some are simple niches, small square openings cut into the rock at regular intervals. These held votive offerings, small statues of gods or bowls of incense, left by travelers seeking safe passage. Others are more elaborate, carved with images of deities or inscriptions in the Nabataean script, a flowing cursive form of Aramaic, and always along one wall, you can see the channel. It is carved into the stone at roughly shoulder height, a shallow groove no more than a few inches deep but perfectly graded to carry water from the springs outside the city into the heart of Petra. Even the approach to the city was engineered, functional and sacred all at once. As you walk deeper into the sick, the light changes. The sun does not penetrate directly to the canyon floor except at midday, and so the shadows are long and cool. The air smells of stone and dust, and there is a profound silence here, broken only by the sound of your own footsteps and the occasional call of a bird nesting in the high cliffs. The path twists and turns, following the natural curve of the gorge. You cannot see what lies ahead. Each turn reveals only another stretch of narrow passage, another section of layered stone. The anticipation builds. You know something waits at the end of this passage, but the sick refuses to reveal it. And then, quite suddenly, through a final narrow gap between the cliffs, you see it. At first it is only a sliver, a vertical band of impossibly ornate stonework framed by the darkness of the canyon walls. But as you take a few more steps, the view opens, and the full facade of the treasury, Al-Khazna, emerges into the light. It is breathtaking. The facade is more than 100 feet tall, carved entirely from the living rock of the cliff face. It is divided into 2 levels, each adorned with columns in the classical style, Corinthian capitals topped with intricate carvings of acanthus leaves. Between the columns are doorways and niches, some holding statues of gods and mythical creatures. At the top, crowning the entire structure, is a circular pavilion, a tholos, topped with a large urn carved from the same rose-red stone. The craftsmanship is exquisite. Every line is straight, every angle precise, every detail rendered with a delicacy that seems impossible in stone. And the color is unlike anything you have seen. The morning light strikes the facade at an angle, and the stone seems to glow from within, a warm, radiant pink that shifts and deepens as the sun moves across the sky. The treasury was never a treasury. The name is a modern invention, born from local legends that claimed the urn at the top held the treasure of an ancient pharaoh. In truth, this was a royal tomb, a monument to a Nabataean king whose name has been lost to history. It was carved sometime in the 1st century before the Common Era, at the height of Nabataean power and wealth. The tomb was not excavated. It was carved from the top down, beginning with the urn and working downward. Stonemasons would stand on scaffolding, chipping away at the cliff face with iron chisels and mallets, removing everything that was not the building. It was a process of revelation, not construction. The building already existed within the stone. The masons simply freed it. Inside, the tomb is surprisingly simple. A large square chamber, unadorned, with smaller rooms carved into the side walls. There are no inscriptions, no paintings, no clues to identify the person who was laid to rest here. But the exterior speaks volumes. It proclaims wealth, sophistication, and power. It declares that the ruler of Petra was not a desert chieftain, but a monarch whose kingdom could rival the great Hellenistic states of the Mediterranean. The treasury is only the beginning. Beyond it, the valley opens into a wide basin surrounded by cliffs, and on every side, carved into the rock, are more tombs. Dozens of them, hundreds. They range from simple cave-like openings to elaborate multi-story facades rivaling the treasury itself. This is the necropolis, the city of the dead, and it is here that the full ambition of the Nabataeans becomes clear. The largest and most impressive tombs are known collectively as the royal tombs, a series of monumental facades carved into the eastern cliff face overlooking the city center. The first is the urn tomb, named for the large urn-shaped finial that once stood atop its pediment. The facade is massive, more than 80 feet wide, fronted by a colonnaded courtyard carved from the bedrock. The interior is a single vast chamber, its walls smoothed and polished, its ceiling high and vaulted. The stone here displays some of the most dramatic color variations in all of Petra, swirls of red, yellow, cream and purple flowing through the rock like waves. In the 6th century of the Common Era, long after the Nabataeans had vanished, this tomb was converted into a Christian church. You can still see the remains of Christian inscriptions carved into the walls, a layer of history written over the original purpose. Next is the silk tomb, so named because the stone of its facade ripples with color like fine silk cloth, bands of pink and yellow and white flowing horizontally across the rock. The tomb itself is relatively small, but its beauty lies not in its size but in the natural artistry of the stone, a reminder that the Nabataeans chose their canvases as carefully as any painter. Beyond the silk tomb is the Corinthian tomb, a structure that seems to blend multiple architectural traditions into a single, almost chaotic whole. The lower level is classical, with 4 columns framing 3 doorways, but the upper level is more ornate, more baroque, with broken pediments and decorative urns and a profusion of carved details that suggest a later period, a time when Nabataean style was being influenced more heavily by Roman tastes. And finally, at the northern end of the row, stands the palace tomb, the largest of all. Its facade is more than 160 feet wide and rises in multiple tiers, each level supported by rows of columns. The scale is staggering, and the ambition even more so. The architects designed a facade so large that the natural cliff face was not tall enough to contain it. The upper portions had to be built up with masonry, blocks of stone carefully shaped and fitted to blend with the carved rock below. This was no longer pure rock-cut architecture. It was a hybrid, a testament to the Nabataeans' willingness to adapt and innovate. These tombs were not hidden. They were not meant to be secret or modest. They faced the city, visible to everyone who walked through the streets below. They were statements of power and permanence. They said, "We will be remembered. Our names may fade, but our works will endure." And they were right. The names are gone. The inscriptions are weathered beyond reading, but the tombs remain, and they still speak. To walk through Petra at its height, in the 1st century of the Common Era, is to walk through a city unlike any other in the ancient world. It is not a city of straight Roman roads and uniform buildings. It is organic, irregular, shaped by the landscape as much as by human hands. The streets follow the natural contours of the valley floor, winding between cliffs and boulders. The buildings are a mix of carved facades and freestanding structures, some built from blocks of sandstone, others from mud, brick and timber. The city center lies in a broad open area at the base of the royal tombs, where the main wadi has been widened and leveled to create a kind of plaza. Here, in the cool shade of the morning, the market comes to life. Merchants arrive from across the city and from distant lands, setting up stalls beneath striped awnings of woven cloth. The smells are overwhelming, a rich, chaotic blend of spices, roasted meat, animal hides, and human sweat. There is frankincense and myrrh, of course, the lifeblood of Petra's economy, piled in small mountains of golden and brown resin. There are bolts of silk from China, dyed in colors that seem impossibly bright, reds and blues and greens that shimmer in the light. There are ceramics from Greece, oil lamps from Egypt, glassware from Syria, and metalwork from as far away as India. The languages you hear are just as varied. Nabataean Arabic, of course, spoken in a dialect unique to this region, but also Aramaic, the common tongue of trade across the Near East. Greek, spoken by merchants from the Mediterranean cities. Latin, heard occasionally from Roman officials or soldiers passing through, and fragments of languages you cannot identify, carried here by traders from lands you have never heard of. The people themselves are a tapestry of cultures. Nabataean men and women wear long robes suited to the desert climate, often dyed in earth tones of brown, rust, and cream. The wealthier among them display their status with jewelry, bracelets, and necklaces of gold and silver inlaid with carnelian and turquoise. Women often wear their hair long and braided, adorned with beads and small coins that chime softly as they move. But there are also Greeks in their shorter tunics, Egyptians in linen kilts, and the occasional Roman in a toga, looking slightly uncomfortable in the desert heat. The Nabataeans are traders by nature, and they have learned to accommodate and respect the customs of their guests. Business is conducted with a blend of haggling and hospitality. A transaction might begin with an offer of tea, a slow conversation about family and weather before the actual negotiation begins. Trust is everything in a world where contracts are sealed with a handshake and a reputation can be worth more than gold. The market is noisy, chaotic, and alive. Children dart between the stalls, chasing each other or begging for scraps of food. Dogs lie in the shade, too hot to bother with the commotion. Somewhere, a musician plays a simple melody on a wooden flute, the notes rising and falling like the wind. This is the heart of Petra, the place where the wealth of the East meets the demand of the West, where cultures collide and blend, where the desert and the wider world come together. Beyond the market, the city spreads out in a network of residential areas, workshops, and public buildings. The homes of the wealthy are carved directly into the cliffs, cool and spacious, with rooms opening onto interior courtyards, where fountains play and small gardens grow in the shade. These houses are surprisingly comfortable, with plastered walls, tiled floors, and niches for oil lamps that provide light in the evenings. The less wealthy live in freestanding homes built from sandstone blocks or mud brick, clustered together in narrow lanes that twist through the valley. These homes are simpler, often just 1 or 2 rooms, but they are well built and well maintained. The Nabataeans take pride in their city, and even the humblest dwelling is kept clean and orderly. There are workshops where craftsmen labor over their trades. Potters shape vessels on wheels spun by hand, their fingers slick with wet clay. Blacksmiths hammer iron into tools and weapons, the clang of metal on metal echoing off the surrounding cliffs. Weavers work looms, creating the striped textiles that are a signature of Nabataean style. And in the shadow of the great tombs, stone masons continue the endless work of carving, shaping new facades and repairing old ones, their chisels ringing against the rock. There are also public buildings, structures that serve the community as a whole. There is a theater, carved into the side of a hill, a Roman-style semicircle of stone benches that can seat several thousand people. Here, performances are held, plays and musical recitals, offerings to the gods and entertainment for the living. There are bathhouses, fed by the city's intricate water system, where men and women can bathe in separate chambers, soaking in warm water heated by underground fires. And there are temples, both carved and built, dedicated to the gods who watch over Petra and its people. The social structure of Petra is complex but relatively fluid. At the top are the royal family and the high nobility, the families who control the trade routes and the city's administration. Below them are the wealthy merchants, men and women who have grown rich through commerce and who often hold significant political influence. Then come the craftsmen and skilled workers, the backbone of the city's economy. And finally, the laborers and servants, including slaves captured in war or purchased from distant markets. But unlike some ancient societies, there is a degree of mobility here. A clever merchant can rise to wealth and influence. A skilled craftsman can earn respect and a comfortable living. The Nabataeans value competence and success, and while birth matters, it is not the only measure of a person's worth. Daily life in Petra follows the rhythms of the desert. The day begins early, before the heat becomes unbearable. People rise with the dawn, perform their morning prayers and rituals, and then set about their work. By midday, when the sun is at its zenith and the stone radiates heat like an oven, the city slows. People retreat to the shade, doze, or conduct business in the cool interiors of their homes. As the afternoon wanes and the temperature drops, activity resumes. The market fills again, and the streets come alive with conversation and commerce. Evening is a time for family and community. Meals are taken together, often outdoors in courtyards or on rooftops where the air is cooler. The food is simple but flavorful: flatbread, roasted lamb or goat, lentils and chickpeas, dates and figs, all washed down with water, or for the wealthy, wine imported from the Mediterranean. After the meal, there is time for storytelling, for music, for prayer. And as the stars emerge in the vast desert sky, the city settles into a deep and peaceful quiet. Religion in Petra is woven into every aspect of life, inseparable from the daily rhythms of work and family and community. The Nabataeans are not a people of great temples in the Greek or Egyptian style, filled with columns and statues and elaborate rituals. Their religion is older, rooted in the desert itself, in the mountains and the sky, and the hidden places where water flows. The chief god of the Nabataeans is Dashara, whose name means Lord of the Mountain. He is a deity of fertility, of storms, of the life-giving rain that falls so rarely and so violently in this land. Dashara is not usually depicted in human form. Instead, he is represented by a simple block of stone, a sacred symbol that embodies his presence. These sacred stones, called beetles, can be found throughout Petra, set up in shrines and high places, anointed with oil and wine, offerings poured out in hope and gratitude. Alongside Dashara is Aluza, the goddess, whose name means the mighty one. She is associated with the morning star, with fertility, with protection. Some scholars believe she is related to the Arabian goddess Elat or even the Mesopotamian Ishtar, but to the Nabataeans, she is uniquely their own. She too is honored with offerings, with incense and sacrifice, with prayers spoken at dawn when her star rises in the east. The high places are the most sacred sites in Petra, open-air sanctuaries carved into the mountaintops where the gods are closest and the boundary between earth and sky is thin. To reach one of these high places, you must climb, following narrow paths cut into the rock, ascending steep stairs that wind up the cliff face. The climb is not easy, and that is part of the point. It is a pilgrimage, a test of devotion and endurance. When you finally reach the summit, you find yourself standing on a wide platform of smooth stone, leveled and shaped by human hands. At the center is an altar, a raised block where sacrifices are made. Around the altar are carved channels to carry away the blood of the offerings, and basins to catch it. There are also niches carved into the rock, places to set offerings of incense or small statues. And there are beetles, the sacred stones, standing silent and ancient in the wind. The view from the high place is extraordinary. You can see the entire valley spread out below, the rooftops of Petra, the winding course of the Wadi, the distant mountains fading into haze. The wind here is constant, strong and clean, and it carries the smell of the desert, dust and stone and wild sage. Standing here, you understand why the Nabataeans chose this place for worship. It is a place of power, of connection to something larger than human life. The rituals performed at the high places are ancient. Animals are brought up the mountain, goats and sheep, and sometimes, on the most important occasions, a bull. The animal is washed and blessed. Its throat is cut, and its blood is poured onto the altar and into the carved channels. The meat is roasted and shared, a communal meal that binds the people to each other and to the gods. Wine is poured out as a libation, and incense is burned, the smoke rising into the sky, carrying prayers upward. These are not grim or fearful rituals. They are celebrations, moments of gratitude for water and safety, for prosperity and health. The gods are not distant or indifferent. They are present, woven into the landscape, part of the same world the Nabataeans inhabit. As the centuries pass and Petra's contact with the wider world deepens, Nabataean religion begins to change. Greek and Roman gods are introduced, sometimes identified with the old Nabataean deities, sometimes worshipped alongside them. Dashara becomes associated with Dionysus or Zeus. Aluza is linked to Aphrodite or Atargates. Temples are built in the Greco-Roman style, with columns and pediments and marble statues. But the old traditions do not disappear. The high places remain sacred. The beetles are still anointed. The Nabataeans are pragmatic people, and they see no contradiction in honoring both the gods of their ancestors and the gods of their trading partners. Religion, like commerce, is a matter of relationships, of maintaining good terms with all the powers that shape the world. In the 1st century before the Common Era, a new and overwhelming power begins to cast its shadow across the ancient world. Rome, once a small city-state in central Italy, has become a vast empire, stretching from Spain to Syria, from the deserts of North Africa to the forests of Gaul. The Roman legions are unstoppable, and the Roman appetite for expansion seems limitless. For the Nabataeans, Rome is both a threat and an opportunity. The Romans are the greatest consumers of luxury goods in the world. Their cities are filled with temples that burn incense, with wealthy families who perfume their homes and anoint their bodies with exotic oils. The demand for frankincense, myrrh, spices, and silk has never been higher, and Petra, as the gatekeeper of the Incense Road, profits immensely. Trade with Rome brings wealth, but it also brings influence. Roman merchants establish permanent residences in Petra. Roman architectural styles begin to appear in the city's buildings. The Nabataean elite adopt Roman fashions, Roman customs, even Roman names. The kingdom becomes increasingly intertwined with the empire, and for a time, this relationship is mutually beneficial. But Rome does not tolerate true independence. As the first century of the Common Era progresses, the Romans begin to exert more direct control over the regions surrounding Petra. The client kingdoms of Judea, Syria, and Egypt are absorbed into the empire, and the Nabataeans find themselves surrounded. In the year 106 of the Common Era, the Roman Emperor Trajan makes his move. There is no great battle, no siege, no dramatic conquest. Instead, the annexation of the Nabataean Kingdom is achieved through diplomacy, pressure, and the implicit threat of overwhelming force. The last Nabataean king, Rabel II, dies, and Rome simply decrees that his kingdom will not be inherited by a successor. Instead, it becomes the Roman province of Arabia Petraea, with Petra as its capital. For a time, the city continues to prosper. The Romans invest in infrastructure, building a great colonnaded street through the heart of Petra, paving it with stones, lining it with shops and temples. They expand the theater, adding more seating and decorative elements. They build bathhouses and administrative buildings. Petra remains an important commercial center, and the flow of trade continues. But something fundamental has changed. The Nabataeans are no longer masters of their own destiny. The trade routes that once funneled wealth exclusively through Petra are now controlled by Rome, and the Romans are beginning to explore alternative routes. Ships sailing from Egyptian ports can carry goods directly to Rome, bypassing the overland caravan routes altogether. The merchants who once came to Petra as guests now come as Roman citizens, subject to Roman law, paying Roman taxes. The old Nabataean elite retained some measure of influence, but real power lies with the Roman governor and the Roman garrison stationed in the city. The spirit of independence, the sense of Petra as a unique and sovereign place, begins to fade. For the next 2 centuries, Petra remains a prosperous provincial city, but it is no longer the center of its own world. The great age of tomb building ends. No new monuments rival the treasury or the royal tombs. The energy of the city turns inward, focused on maintaining what has already been built rather than creating something new. And then, in the 4th century of the Common Era, disaster strikes. The earth shakes. It is not the first earthquake to strike this region, and it will not be the last. The Petra Valley lies along a major fault line, a zone where the African and Arabian tectonic plates grind slowly against each other. Every few generations, the accumulated stress is released in a violent upheaval. On this occasion, the quake is severe. Buildings collapse. The freestanding structures, built from stacked stone and mud brick, are particularly vulnerable. Roofs cave in, walls crumble, wooden beams snap and fall. The carved facades, being part of the living rock, fare better, but some are damaged, their intricate details shaken loose, their doorways choked with rubble. Most devastating of all is the damage to the water system. The carefully graded channels crack and shift, ceramic pipes shatter, cisterns collapse, their contents draining away into the sand. Without water, Petra cannot sustain its population. Repairs are attempted, but the city's wealth is no longer what it was. The trade routes have shifted. The Roman Empire itself is beginning to fracture, beset by internal conflict and external invasion. Resources that might once have been devoted to rebuilding Petra are needed elsewhere. Another earthquake strikes in the 6th century, and this time, the damage is even worse. The population of Petra, already much reduced, dwindles further. Families leave, seeking safety and opportunity in other cities. The market grows quiet, the streets empty. The great monuments stand silent, no longer the backdrop to a living city, but relics of a fading past. During this same period, the religious landscape of the region is changing. Christianity has become the dominant faith of the Roman and later Byzantine Empire. Churches are built in Petra, some of them carved into the old tombs, converting the resting places of Nabataean kings into Christian sanctuaries. The high places are abandoned, the altars left to weather in the wind. The old gods are not worshipped openly anymore, though perhaps in secret. Some still pour wine onto the sacred stones and whisper prayers to Dashara and Al-Uzza. In the 7th century, a new power sweeps across the region. The armies of Islam, emerging from the Arabian Peninsula, conquer Syria, Palestine, and Egypt in a series of rapid and decisive campaigns. Petra, already a shadow of its former self, passes into the hands of the new Islamic caliphates. For a time, it retains some importance as a stop on the pilgrimage route to Mecca. Christian pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land also pass through, and a few kishas leave accounts of the ruins they see, the great carved facades, the silent tombs. But Petra is no longer a city, it is a place of memory, a place where the desert is slowly reclaiming what was once taken from it. By the medieval period, Petra has almost entirely vanished from the written record. European maps do not show it. The great geographers and chroniclers of the Islamic world mention it only in passing, if at all. The local Bedouin tribes, the Badou and others, know the site well. They use the tombs as shelters for their animals and themselves. They know the location of the hidden cisterns and the paths through the mountains, but they do not speak of it to outsiders. Petra has become a secret, a place guarded and half forgotten. In Europe, however, rumors persist. Medieval travelers returning from the east tell stories of a lost city carved from rose-red stone, a city of vast tombs and hidden treasures. Some identify it with the biblical city of Sela, mentioned in the Book of Kings. Others conflate it with other ruins, other legends. The stories grow and mutate, passed from traveler to traveler, from manuscript to manuscript, until Petra becomes more myth than memory. Centuries pass. The Renaissance comes and goes. The age of exploration opens the world to European eyes, but the interior of Arabia remains closed, too dangerous, too remote. And Petra sleeps, its monuments worn smooth by wind and sand, its streets buried, its name almost forgotten. In the early 19th century, a young Swiss explorer named Johann Ludwig Burckhardt is traveling through the Middle East. He has been commissioned by the African Association of London to explore the interior of Africa, but he knows that to travel safely in the Islamic world, he must disguise himself. He learns Arabic, adopts the clothing and customs of a Muslim, and takes the name Sheikh Ibrahim ibn Abdullah. He is educated, meticulous, and intensely curious. In the summer of 1812, Burckhardt is traveling through southern Jordan when he hears rumors from the local Bedouin of ancient ruins hidden in the mountains near the village of Wadi Musa. He suspects, from the descriptions, that these may be the remains of the lost city of Petra. But the Bedouin are suspicious of outsiders, and Burckhardt knows that if he reveals his true interest, he will be turned away, or worse. So he devises a plan. He tells his Bedouin guides that he has made a vow to sacrifice a goat at the tomb of Aaron, the brother of Moses, which is said to be located on a mountain near Wadi Musa. To reach the tomb, he explains, he must pass through the valley. The guides, seeing no harm in this pious act, agree to lead him. Burckhardt enters the sikh, and as he walks through the narrow gorge, he sees the carvings, the niches, the channels carved into the rock. His heart races. He knows he is walking in the footsteps of something ancient and extraordinary. When the treasury emerges from the shadows, he is overwhelmed. He later writes in his journal that it is one of the most beautiful structures he has ever seen, carved with a precision and artistry that rivals anything in Greece or Rome. But Burckhardt cannot linger. His guides are watching, and any sign of too much interest in the ruins will raise suspicion. He walks quickly through the valley, noting what he can, sketching in his mind the layout of the tombs and the colonnaded street. He performs his sacrifice on the mountain, as promised, and then with great reluctance he leaves. He does not return. But when he reaches Cairo, he writes a detailed account of what he has seen, and he sends it back to Europe. The letter is published, and for the first time in more than 1,000 years, the Western world learns of Petra. Burckhardt's account sparks a wave of interest. Other travelers follow, some of them scholars, others adventurers, still others artists and poets who come seeking inspiration. One of the first is the British naval officer Charles Irby and his companion James Mangles, who visit in 1818 and produce the first detailed sketches of the site. In 1839, the Scottish painter David Roberts arrives and creates a series of breathtaking lithographs, images of the treasury and the royal tombs rendered in glowing, romantic detail. These images are widely circulated in Europe and America, and Petra becomes a symbol of lost civilizations, of the mysterious and the exotic. The American explorer John Lloyd Stevens visits and writes vividly of the experience, describing Petra as a city of tombs, a necropolis, a place of the dead that seems to defy the passage of time. Throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, Petra is excavated, studied, and mapped. Archaeologists begin to piece together the story of the Nabataeans, though much remains uncertain. The written records are sparse, the inscriptions weathered and fragmentary. But slowly, a picture emerges of a people who were traders and engineers, who blended cultures and carved stone, who built a kingdom in the desert and then vanished. Today, Petra is one of the most famous archaeological sites in the world. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, visited by hundreds of thousands of tourists each year. The Sikh is still the main entrance, and the walk through it is still breathtaking, though now it is crowded with visitors, not silent as it was in Burckhardt's time. The treasury still glows in the morning light, and the royal tombs still stand watch over the valley. But much of Petra remains unexcavated. Archaeologists estimate that less than 20% of the site has been fully explored. Beneath the sand and rubble lie entire neighborhoods, workshops, temples, and homes. Ground-penetrating radar and other modern technologies hint at what might still be hidden, vast structures that have not seen daylight for more than 1,000 years. The Bedouin who once lived among the ruins have been relocated to a modern village nearby, a move that was intended to protect the site, but that also severed a living connection between the people and the place. Some still work as guides, sharing their knowledge of the trails and the tombs, keepers of a tradition that stretches back centuries. Petra is no longer a secret. It is no longer lost, but it retains a kind of mystery, a quality that cannot be fully captured in photographs or explained in guidebooks. It is a place where human ambition and the natural world met and created something that was neither entirely one nor the other, a city that is also a sculpture, a monument that is also a mountain. To stand in Petra today, in the early morning before the crowds arrive, is to feel the weight of time in a way that few places allow. The stones are warm beneath your hand, smoothed by 2,000 years of wind and rain. The silence is profound, broken only by the call of a bird or the distant murmur of voices. You think of the people who walked these streets, who carved these tombs, who built their lives in this impossible place. You think of the merchants arriving with caravans, the priests climbing to the high places, the stonemasons shaping the cliffs, the children playing in the shadow of the royal tombs. They are gone, all of them, and their names are forgotten, but their work remains. The city they built, the kingdom they carved from stone, still stands as a testament to what human beings can achieve when they refuse to accept the limits of their environment. The Nabataeans looked at a desert and saw opportunity. They looked at a cliff and saw a palace. They looked at scarcity and created abundance. They did not conquer through force of arms. They did not rule through fear or oppression. They built their power on knowledge, on trade, on the ability to turn the harshest landscape on earth into a crossroads of civilizations. And in the end, they were defeated, not by an army but by time, by the shifting of trade routes, by earthquakes, by the slow and inevitable processes of change that no amount of wealth or ingenuity can hold back forever. But Petra did not truly die. It transformed. It became a legend, a symbol, a place that lives as much in the imagination as in the physical world. It became a reminder that greatness is not measured only in duration, but in the intensity of achievement, in the beauty and audacity of what is created. The desert holds many secrets, and Petra is one of them, but it is not hidden anymore. It is open to the sky, open to the world, open to anyone willing to walk through the Sikh and see what the Nabataeans built. And what they built, what they carved into the rose-red cliffs of southern Jordan, is nothing less than a kingdom made eternal by stone. The wind still moves through the valley. The light still shifts across the facades, painting them in shades of pink and gold and violet. The water still flows, though now through modern pipes rather than ancient channels. And the tombs still stand, silent and patient, waiting for the next visitor, the next dreamer, the next person who looks at them and understands that this place, this impossible place, was once the center of the world. And so our journey through Petra comes to a close. We have walked through the sick and stood before the treasury. We have climbed to the high places and watched the sun set over the royal tombs. We have smelled the spices in the market and heard the sound of water flowing through channels carved in stone. We have lived for a brief time in the kingdom of the Nabataeans, a people who built their city not on fertile plains or beside great rivers, but in the heart of the desert, in a place where logic said no city could survive. They proved that logic wrong. They turned stone into architecture and scarcity into wealth. They created something that has outlasted empires, that has survived the collapse of kingdoms and the passage of millennia. Petra is no longer lost, but it will always be hidden in a way, hidden in the folds of the desert, hidden in the layers of time, hidden in the silence of stone. It waits for those who seek it, and for those who find it, it offers a glimpse of a world that was, a world that can never be again, but that still speaks to us across the centuries. Thank you for walking with me through this ancient city. Thank you for listening to the story of the Nabataeans and their impossible kingdom. As the desert wind carries our voices away and the stars begin to appear in the vast Arabian sky, let us remember that all things pass, but some things, carved deep enough, endure. Rest well now. Dream of red cliffs and hidden springs, of caravans crossing the sand, of a city where water was life and stone was eternity. Until we meet again in another time, in another place, may you sleep in peace.